part of Young Judea has been the best thing that could ever happen to me. As you can see, I'm not the tallest around. And back in 8th grade, the security officers at the airport used to get mad at me for taking my shoes off because they didn't believe that I was over 12 years old. Being so small, I was also pretty quiet. I barely knew anything about year-round Young Judea, and going to a convention filled with older kids that I didn't know terrified me. But a friend of mine begged me to come, and after a weekend filled with amazing pillow and engaging Shiraz sessions, I was hooked. From Chicago events in my own backyard, to Northeast conventions in the field, and devotion to creating the youth village in Rwanda. The fact that one strong woman from Young Judea was able to make such an impact on the world inspired every Maskirut member there. We are all so motivated to continue the legacy of strong female and male leaders in Young Judea. Not only are we inspired by previous generations, but we are working to inspire new generations of Young Judeans as well. At TY this summer, I could not believe the number of campers who came up to me and asked for help to create year-round activities in their hometowns. Young Judeans are wanting to be active everywhere. To this day, I still need to stand on chairs when I give announcements. But I know that being involved in Young Judea has made me stand much taller. And I cannot wait to spend the year inspiring a new generation of Judean leaders to do the same. Thank you for all of your support.
Good evening. My name is Zachary Kibble, and I was a Judean before I was born. Young Judea has been my second family for the past 11 years. I started off at Camp Young Judea Sprout Lake, where my mom first met. I then shifted over to Camp Tel Yehuda, where both my parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins spent their childhood summers. Finally, this past summer, I experienced Israel on Machon, a program that my dad has been talking about since who knows when. I plan on working at Young Judea camps in the future, and hope that I will be going on Year Course, the same program my mom experienced. A couple of years ago, I purchased a Japanese toy called a kendama off of Amazon, and had it shipped to me at Tel Yehuda. Little did I know that this ball on a stick would become one of my major Young Judea claims to fame. The moment this toy came into my hands, I took off. Everybody wanted to try it. Everybody wanted to go. To this day, people still know me because of this small toy. But Zach, why is this wooden toy so important? This toy, this kendama, represents Young Judea perfectly. It may look like a small wooden stick with a ball, but it is much, much more than that. You can catch the ball in 4 different ways. Catch the stick on the ball, balance the stick on the ball. You can even throw the whole thing in the air. Young Judea may just seem like summer camp, but it is much, much more than that. There are tons of Young Judea year-round experiences where you can learn leadership skills and be a part of amazing events. You can create new friendships that will truly last a lifetime. Most importantly, you can become a Zionist and help support Israel every single day. Just as this little toy has become a part of me, Young Judea will always be a part of me, and I plan to stay a Judean for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Welcome everybody, Bruchim Habayim. My name is Michael Berman, I'm the chair of the board of Young Judea. It gives me chills to see everyone here this evening. We really have moved Young Judea forward together. In the 1970s, I was a Chanech at Tel Yehuda, and little did I know that Young Judea went beyond TY. As far as I knew, TY was Young Judea. Then I went on Year Course in 1975 and discovered that YJ, in fact, did go beyond TY. In the 1990s, both of my sons attended CYJ Midwest, so at that point, CYJ Midwest became my favorite TY camp. And then all of my nieces and nephews went to CJ North Carolina, and they convinced me that CJ should really be my favorite YJ camp. And then my oldest niece married an alum from CYJ Texas, and he convinced me that CYJ Texas is really the best YJ camp. All that was missing was Sprout Lake for my resume. And guess what? My 2-year-old granddaughter lives in Brooklyn. So So I won't be surprised if she starts working on me in a few years to convince me that Sprout is really the best YJ camp. Most of us here this evening were transformed by our experience in Young Judea. We are committed Jews, Zionists, and social activists because of the intense education and social experiences we had in our clubs, camps, and on Israel programs. We have, and we will continue to make the world a better place because of our experience in Young Judea. There's a group of us that have worked very hard over the past 4+ years to ensure that Young Judea moves forward and continues to thrive. In so doing, we're fulfilling our mission and helping YJ families everywhere raise passionate, pluralistic Jews with a lifelong connection and commitment to Israel and the Jewish people. One of the great joys of being involved in Young Judea over the past few years has been meeting Young Judean alumni from their 20s to their 80s. Even though there are large gaps between these different generations, I have been repeatedly impressed with how similar our experiences were in Young Judea over the years. The core, the essence of Young Judea has remained durable and strong for generations. And with our continued hard work and financial support, the core will remain durable for many years to come. I'd like to thank our senior YJ staff. They are the engine that drives Young Judea forward on a daily basis. Their commitment through thick and thin makes us all proud. Simon Klarfeld, our executive director, our camp directors, David Weinstein, Helen Jobener, Frank Silverlift, Robin Anderson, and Tom Rosenberg. And I would like to thank the current and past camp board members who have joined us this evening. Thank you to our amazing Israel Program Director, Moshe Toledano, our year-round Programs Director, Sharon Schoenfeld, and all the past and present Young Judea Global Board members who have joined us this evening. Thank you to our friends and partners from Hadassah who for decades carried the load of supporting Young Judea and now are a critical partner as we move forward. And thank you to the countless volunteers and alumni who helped in so many ways, including the incredibly dedicated and generous YJG board. I would like to especially thank the incredible co-chairs of this event, Betsy and Ron Gold and David Stone. Hats off to you all for the hard work. And finally, I would like to thank all of you here this evening for your incredible support of Young Judea as we celebrate moving Young Judea forward together. So let's take a look at YJ past, present, and future.
For me, Young Judea is community.
Young Judea is about the power of idealism.
A huge effect on every aspect of my life.
Who I am as a person, who I am as a Jew, who I am as a Zionist.
Young Judea is a family and an incredibly strong foundation and launching point.
Myself, my life, my family, everything has its roots back in Young Judea.
It includes people, it includes morals and ethics, the dynamics of religious change. If we could bring excitement into this historical process, then we're doing something very important.
It gave me the feeling of an empowerment.
Meeting people from all over the world and all over the country.
Young Judea is at the center of everything I and my family are. Our values and what's formed and shaped us.
What the camp did was have immense respect for the creativity and intellect of kids.
When the kids, with all their energy, with all their rebellious teenage energy, wanted to express themselves, we gave them a language. We gave them a community. And what was the language? It was Zionist ideas and Zionist values.
We were fun-loving and things that normal teenagers want to do, but there was a very serious side to Young Judea.
I love, as a parent, the absence of technology.
I think they get more information at their fingertips. The point is, how do you create responsible, confident people that will ultimately go into the world and change it for the better?
Tel Yehuda is the most unique, vibrant, dynamic, exciting, and diverse Jewish community that seems anywhere in the world.
We eat together, we pray together, we play games together. We have real communication.
Definitely gain a strong sense of Jewish identity and personal Jewish identity.
But we're also going to bring at least 30 or 40 Israelis every summer, and they bring with them Israel.
You know, as a parent, sometimes you realize that when you really like something or you want something, your kids sometimes almost have a radar. They want to do the opposite. But Sprout, from the moment My kids went there, they just loved it.
My favorite Young Judea year-round experience was definitely Alternative Winter Break. It went with a bus full of, I think, 50 teenagers who chose to devote their winter break to community service.
The gap year was just embedded in my family, so of course they're going to go to Israel.
I decided that I wanted to come on year course because I just heard it was an amazing experience.
Coming out of high school, I wasn't ready for another year of school, and coming on year course has prepared me for life and given me new experiences I wouldn't have had any other way to experience.
Israel's one of the most spiritual places in the world. It's amazing to be in the center of that and to see that happen.
For the state of Israel to be vibrant and relevant in the 21st century, it has to be a place where all Jews feel at home.
I think you see a lot of really intense conflict right now within the Jewish community when it comes to talking about Israel. That Young Judea could lead the way, both educating tomorrow's leaders and talking to today's leaders.
We live in a very scary world where there is more anti-Semitism than I ever experienced.
But what we should be more concerned about is creating the opportunities that Young Judea can create that equips our young people with the confidence and the knowledge to be able to stand up and articulate what they believe in.
You know, I think it's really important for all of us to know who we are, and we may have to defend that. My children may have to defend who they are.
There will never be a world that Young Judea's lessons don't have a place in.
It's a pluralistic Zionist movement where all Jews of every stripe and color and flavor can express themselves and find meaning.
We do such good work. Why should we limit ourselves to a couple thousand kids every year in Israel and 2,600 kids in summer camps? Why not twice that, 3 times that?
You know, the world, I think that we can all confidently say is a better place today because of all the incredible things that Young Judeans around the world have done to make this world a better place.
My name is Simon Klarfeld, and I have the enormous privilege of being the Executive Director of Young Judea. I have just returned from Israel, where I had the enormous pleasure of participating in the opening ceremony of Year Course, together with Mel Reesfield and 150 Chanichim. Not just any Year Course, mind you, the 60th. Standing, addressing the Chanichim at Goren Park, at the An Haman Lookout, made me reflect on how much has changed in this world over those 60 years. American teen culture now means they're multitaskers with unparalleled access to technology and information, and have a sharp focus on resume building and their college careers. What it means to be Jewish has changed. We are no longer the chosen people, but we are the choosing people, as my old professor used to say, selecting what parts of our traditions and connections we select as ours, as long as being Jewish is relevant to our broader identities, that is. Israel and the Israel-diaspora relationship has also clearly changed. In the media, the David versus Goliath imagery has now been reversed. Israel is a strong, entrepreneurial, creative nation that brings relief to communities around the world. We need to redefine the Israel-diaspora relationship through the development of a real, nuanced, critical partnership with Israel. And organizationally, Young Judea is now an independent organization. But some things, at least in Young Judea over those 60 years, remain the same. Our mission, inspiring American Jews' lifelong relationship with Israel and the Jewish people. Our core values, pluralism, Zionism, Jewish pride, leadership development, and social activism, remain at the core of everything that we do. and we continue to strive towards excellence in all that we do, all around the world. So what has changed is how we do what we do. We now serve 3 to 35-year-olds. Perhaps a little different from when you were in Young Judea. We recently opened 2 day camps in Brooklyn and Westchester under Camp Young Judea Sprout Lake, where we are now experimenting in teaching Hebrew, Jewish values and community building in a contemporary society in brand new ways. It is magical to see. At the older end of the spectrum, our young adult programs, both short and long term, have blossomed. Our participant numbers actually have doubled in just 1 year of one of our new programs. We now have a wider array of programs from local touchpoints to immersive experiences than ever before, providing more entry points and pathways along each Chanukah's journey. So what's on the horizon for Young Judea in the coming months and the years? Our camps will continue to blossom and grow, both in the number of campers who experience the magic of Young Judea and the number of leadership opportunities we provide our older teens and college students as madrichim. Camp facilities will need to become more attractive, more updated, and enable that capacity and enable the expansion of programming in new ways. And we will hopefully soon be adding Camp Young Judea West back on the map as part of the camp. In Israel, following a comprehensive review of year course, the program is soon to launch the Leadership Training Institute, which will be training camp staff, student leaders, and social activists, ensuring that our impact continues through the participants' college years and beyond. Also in Israel, we will continue to expand programs being offered. Brushstrokes is an example of a brand new program being launched next summer for high school kids who love the arts. They will see Israel and Judaism through the lens of art and the artists that they meet in Israel, in partnership with the Bezalel Arts Academy. We intend to expand our year-round programming in different models, some based on the old traditional club model in more places than now across the country. Other ideas are based on new models, including programming for identity-based communities, based on their passions and interests in the secular world, not treating every young Jew in the same way. All of this is so that we can continue to be a major force in shaping the lives of American Jews and ensuring that they are empowered to lead their communities and change the world. To my board and staff, thank you. None of this could have happened without you. And to all those here this evening, and the countless alumni and friends we have heard from who are here with us in spirit, thank you. Your involvement and support is critical as we move forward. As my mind returns to last week at Goren Park, perhaps the most surprising, moving moment for me was before the Chanukahim actually arrived on the scene. Mel Reesfield, with tears in his eyes, was reflecting to a small group of us about Young Judea's influence on inspiring Anne in the core Jewish value of Tikkun Olam, to stand up and make a difference when you see injustice. Mel, more than any other individual young Judean educator, provided that inspiration, that role modeling. Mel, we appreciate you more than we could ever say.
Anything I learned from them, I learned how to do really well. I learned how to give a sikha. I learned how to be a passionate Zionist. I learned how to love Israel, the Jewish people, human beings. And I learned to try to be as good a person as I can be. Thank you, Mel, for all you've taught me.
You can't skip Tefillah and tell Yehuda and not get caught. He said, I forgot my kippah. And he went, bullshit, Lieberman, you were skipping Tefillah and God is punishing you.
Very importantly, you came to my house and convinced my parents that I could TY and not become a communist. That made all the difference.
Many things I learned from Mel, probably the most important was how to shoot the two-handed set shot. Love the man.
It was basketball, it was fun, it was adventure, but we decided we were going to give these kids a feeling of Jewish history, but do it in a way that would be exciting.
My fondest memory of Mel is of him teaching us Hebrew songs, how his eyes would sparkle and you could see the love for the Hebrew language.
The passion, every single day, in every lesson that he gave, that was Mel. And he's never lost that.
Because there's something about telling you who to experience, the passion of telling you who. Amazing.
I learned from Mel the love for the movement and for what we were doing and the seriousness of it.
A living Zionism, a living Judaism. And part of that living Judaism is that moral and ethical code.
From Mel Reesfield, I learned how to cheat at basketball and get away with it.
Quick shot over him and got it, and boy, did he nail me. I still have the bruise here, I think. Mel Reesfield was a terrible cheater. That's why everybody jokes about it, because it was so obvious. You've made my life so much better, so much richer, and you didn't teach me how to cheat.
And I want to use my 30 seconds before the camera to honor Yafa Reesfield. Without Yafa Desai, Melvin, as she was wont to call him when he was in need of direction, would not have become the man that we are honoring this evening.
I'm a better person today because of Mel.
He's an outstanding, charismatic Jewish educator, and I learned a lot from that partnership.
What I learned from Mel was to always start an activity with a bang and always end at the height of the excitement.
One thing I clearly remember in high school was dressing up in prison garb in front of Lincoln Center. The Bolshoi Ballet was playing, and we said, "Let my people go!"
I learned about teachers. Thank you, Mel.
People like Mel have immense respect for the creativity and intellect of kids.
Learn the fact that you can be like this incredible educator and still curse, so we can have this like little fuck. Bonding, I'm not allowed to say the word fuck anymore, but now they have to put it in. We're talking about Mel. You can't talk about Mel without saying fuck.
Fuck you, you can come.
For our beliefs in Zionism, for a whole generation of the kids that I used to go to Hebrew school.
Every opportunity in life is a time to educate.
Those were the days, my friends, if they were. I think they'll never end. Da, 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 da. You got it?
Wow. These forearms. Where did these forearms come from?
Mel surely taught all of us Judaism not something for shrinking violets, but rather for Dvarim like we tried to be. I am thrilled that you're all here. I'm really overwhelmed because it's not just what you're doing for me, the award. It's all of the work that we did in Young Judea and Tel Yehuda over a half a century. We cared. We cared about our own. We cared about others. It's just wonderful that you're all here. And I love you all.
Good evening, Mel and Yafa. My name is David Ruderman. I'm an Alta Kaker. I have been teaching Jewish studies at university for about 45 years, but the height of my educational experience was being one of the original Mel's Boys. This later on I think was Mel's Boys and Girls, but at that time it was Mel's Boys. I worked in Tel Yehuda for 11 summers. I was director of the camp. When I retired, that was a very bad experience at the end being director. But the 10 years that preceded it were glorious years, primarily because Mel and Yafa were with me every minute, and we became very close. I want to tell you just a little bit about my experience with Mel. And I hope, Mel, you are listening because this is really for you. I have honored you before, but at this very special occasion, it is an enormous, enormous honor for me. I want to talk about very briefly, three aspects of Mel Reesfield. And all of you, if you've encountered him, will recognize the words that I'm talking about. First of all, his love for Hebrew. I was his first madrich in Ulpan. And then later on, I ran the Ulpan myself. And it was extraordinary to watch him teach and to learn how to teach Hebrew. The idea, of course, of teaching Hebrew through song was something that Mel had really perfected. But simply watching his engagement with the Lashon Ivrit. I remember he would stand up, every Israeli that came to camp, and he would try to show off his Ivrit Shel Shabbat. So he would say something like, Ani shakua behirurai hasoarim, and no one understood what the hell he was talking about. He couldn't go on with that sentence, but at least the first part of the sentence sort of was making him into this great Hebraeus, of course, which he was. I remember studying and teaching Hebrew texts with him. I also remember running off after a long day of Ulpan with the relief that we could speak English to each other. It was just too much every second to speak Ivrit. I also want to talk, since I'm a Jewish historian, about the great historian Mel Reesfield. Mel, as you recall, had this enormous timeline which he taught all of Jewish history in a half an hour. He also had this incredible lecture on Jesus. And of course, the famous 3 shocks. We could learn all of Jewish history by listening to Mel in his charismatic way. And of course, who could forget Abraham Mapu's Ahavat Zion? Do you remember the tale he would tell of this book, which biblical section, and it was covered up by a Talmud, and the Maskilim were uncovering this book and discovering it for us all. And of course, his lectures on Zionism and on Israel. We, of course, were a little skeptical. After studying Jewish history, I saw that rather than be an historian, he was more an artist creating the historical past. But I learned passion. I learned how to teach Jewish history. I learned how to relate to my communities of students who I've had over the last 45 years. And indeed, some still accuse me of doing the Young Judea thing, even in my classroom today at the University of Maryland. The University of Pennsylvania. Maryland was the first. Thank you. Yale University was the second, and now the University of Pennsylvania. 24 years. That shows you how old this man is. My final point is perhaps the most important. I want to talk about the humanity of being an educator. And I want to understand that Mel and Yafa exemplify that humanity. Perhaps this is the most enduring quality that we can describe when we talk about Mel, despite his cheating at basketball. His personal values, his Hatzolim experience where he met Yafa, the social utopian vision of Jews and Arabs living together, the social vision of labor Zionism. When I later fell in love with Martin Buber and discovered that remarkable essay, Hebrew Humanism, written in 1942, I knew every word of it already because I had learned it from my teacher, Mori Urabi, Mel Reesfield. In that sense, to be an educator is to be an exemplar of humanity. And that, to me, was what Mel Reesfield expressed. I want to close my remarks with a very personal story. I don't know many of you, so I hope you will forgive me if I embarrass you by a personal story. It's a story I've told a few times, and I hope I don't embarrass my wife as well. But nevertheless, the story goes like this. I had just got back from a year in Israel, and I was seeing this wonderful woman named Phyllis. As couples do, we had a big argument and a fight, and she kicked me out of her apartment. And I ran downstairs. This was on 79th Street in Manhattan. And of course, this was long before iPhones. So I went up the street and found a phone booth, put my money in, and called Mel Reesfield. He was my mentor. What else was I supposed to do? I was almost crying. I was so upset. And I told Mel about my problems, and you know what he said to me? He said, look at me and Yafa. Look how happy we are. Why don't you ask the girl to marry you? Look what a wonderful marriage is. Look at my marriage. And indeed, I took his advice, and Phyllis and I have been married for 47 years. And that is what I owe to Mel, among many other things. So I want to say to you, Mel, it is wonderful to be your disciple, to be your friend, and to have you in life for Ad Mea Ve'esrim. I want to call you by your true name. I don't know if anyone else calls Mel here Mel Stay Orez, but that's his real name. And I want to wish him all the blessing in the world. Bivracha ubahokara uba'ahava David. Thank you.
Good evening. I was told keep it to 3 minutes. I remember one time Mel gave us 3 minutes, us kids. He said, all right guys, you only have 3 minutes to come up with as many different ways as you can in Hebrew to say, fuck you. 3 minutes, let's go. That's what I thought of when I thought of Mel. So, every single word I heard from the other speakers tonight, utopia, social activism, Young Judea is the center of my life, leadership, rule breaking, it's all the same things I think of when I think of Mel. And what I was asked to talk about tonight is the legacy that he left in the example that he set for us and then what we then went on to do with our lives. I'm going to tell that through the story of one student. I run schools in Harlem, and we have 2,000 students. And one young boy who showed up on the first day of school, when I founded the school, I actually noticed myself channeling Mel in every talk I gave to the kids and how to figure out how to keep them engaged, and experienced him being there with me. And there was this one young boy who showed up every single day angry. And by the end of 3 weeks, he had been in detention every single day and wouldn't do his work and was just angry and upset and disrupted class. And finally, we found out that his father, who had been in jail for a number of years, and this boy was in 5th grade, he was 9 years old, got out, but didn't come home. Instead, was not going to live with the family, and that just made him so upset. And I met the father, and I told him about how his son was in detention every day, and he said, oh, that reminds me of me when I was his age. And he was surrounded by people living in poverty, by older boys who were selling drugs. He did not have a bright future ahead of him. And fast forward 8 years later, actually, fast forward to last weekend, he texted me about the latest class he's taking in college and how he's only 1 year away from graduating. And he is this charming, lovely, intelligent young man who essentially extricated himself from the cycle of poverty. And that I attribute to Mel. Because everything that I did when I dreamed about starting a school, which became 5 schools, which is now becoming a teacher's college, every single thing I did, I learned in Young Judea and specifically learned from Mel. I was also a madracha in his ulpan, and he told that I was his favorite. He didn't tell any of you that, did he? Just checking. Everything I am is because of Mel, and everything that thousands of kids who we are helping to empower themselves and to reach their own highest potential is because of him as well. So Mel, we love you. Thank you. I would like to introduce a great friend of mine and one of the all-time famous, coolest Judeans there is, the one and only Stephen Greenberg.
I slept with Mel Reesfield. It was at the New Jersey Young Judea Convention in 1979. I was a guest madrich. I barely knew Mel, but inexplicably they assigned me to be his roommate at the Metropolitan Hotel in Asbury Park. Mel spent half the night crying aloud in his bed, "I miss my wife! I miss my dog!" I was a mere teenager and I was too intimidated to ask him to stop, so I just had this the entire night. But I began to see the man's humanity. A couple of years later, I became a Merikez in Alamim at TY. And then I really got to know Mel. He would feed all the new Merikzim each sikha for Alamim the night before we had to give it. And he referred to Alamim as a magic carpet ride through 3,000 years of Jewish history. And the way he would teach us the sikha is he would just perform the entire sikha the night before, and we would kind of take notes, and we would do the sikha the next day. Every sikha contained at least one snappy catchphrase, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with these little catchphrases. A shock from within, a shock from without. Or the three horsemen of the apocalypse, anti-Semitism, assimilation, inner conflict. And he always insisted that we start each sikha with a bombastic opening. And that was the most important thing. He got us through all these sikhot because he was really an incredible teacher, an incredible Hadracha teacher. He was probably the best teacher of leadership that I've ever met. Now, most of us are aware that Mel Reesfield is not a religious man. Everybody at TY knew that he used to go out for bacon and eggs for breakfast on occasion. And sometimes when we were Merikzim and some of us would go out for dinner, he had this little mischievous side, and he would secretly smear the sauce from his spare ribs on the entrees of religious Merikzim. Gil Troy reports that Mel once splashed bouillabaisse on his trout. So definitely not religious. But Mel would say the real miracle of Judaism isn't the parting of the Red Sea, it's not the sun standing still, but it's that moral and ethical code that we have given the world. The same law for the stranger and the citizen, helping the helpless in society. Do not hold back the wages of the worker until the dawn. These are all Mel Reesfield lines that he would say again and again and again about what was important to Judaism to him. Social justice expressed through social activism. And he expressed that activism himself, leading Young Judea to the March on Washington in 1963, and his pioneering work for Soviet Jewry and Ethiopian Jewry, and maybe most importantly, really providing generations of young Judeans with the idealism and the leadership tools to go out and change the world themselves. So there you have it. You have Jewish history, Hadracha, social action. Right, so I basically just showed you how Mel Reesfield embodied the essence of TY's Alamim, Machon, and Eckhart programs, all in one. And yet, the program that he loved to lead the most, as we know, was Ulpan. And David Ruderman, I think, really beautifully talked about Mel's love of Hebrew. But you see that there's not a single aspect of the Young Judea and the TY experience that he didn't affect and even create. Now, tonight is not the first time Young Judea has honored Mel. 26 years ago, in 1990, we paid tribute to his lifetime dedication to TY by raising the funds to build the Mel Reesfield Educational Center at TY, with the lead fundraiser being another Mel Gold. And we have to remember him and his incredible contribution. We thought Mel Reesfield had retired from camp at that point, and that we were doing something to honor his lifetime achievement, but he fooled us all. He actually continued to work at camp on occasion, sometimes for a full session, sometimes for just a week or two, until actually 2006 when he spent his final full session, so far, at TY. And Yafa Reesfield, for her part, worked on the kitchen staff that summer in 2006. She was in her late 70s at the time. And Yafa worked at the kitchen staff because there was no way she was going to be at camp and not contribute. Yafa, as we all know, is an incredible woman in her own right, and as people have said in the presentation before, she really is Mel's rock and deserves our incredible thanks and our respect. At the end of Mel's final session in 2006, I happened to be at CY with my wife Jennifer, who had worked with Mel as an Opan Madrcha, and there was a brief ceremony honoring him. As all the Chanichim chanted his name, Mel gave the entire camp the finger. He still loves giving people the finger. He loves that as much as he loves doing the little Reesfield pose, the little flex with the forearm. I have a lot of photos of Mel from over the years, and a vast majority of them either have him doing the pose or giving the finger. A few years ago at camp, there was a reunion, and we honored Mel again at that point, and I had everybody at camp do the Reesfield pose for him and to give him as a special photo. I'm going to refrain tonight from asking everybody to get up and give him the finger, because I feel like it's dark anyway. You could just imagine everyone here maybe doing a combination of the pose with one hand and the finger with the other hand. And now let's present the award. As I mentioned, we've already done the building at camp, which is still being used by Chanichim. And Mel's received major honors in Israel for his contribution to Jewish education. Still, I think we can never honor Mel Reesfield enough. But what's left? Another even more grandiose building? No. What Young Judea presents to Mel tonight is its first ever Aniva Atah Award, recognizing extraordinary educators, leaders, and professionals in the field of Zionist education who have inspired others. Named after the classic song whose lyrics were written by another great lover of the Hebrew language, Arik Einstein, Aniva Atah Nishaneh et Ha'olam, you and I will change the world. A song which, incidentally, my Machon at TY 40 years ago this summer actually got to introduce to the camp for the first time. It was a hadracha exercise, and we all had to go out to the different flagim, and we all had to teach them this song, Aniva Atah, so that everybody could sing it in the Chal Rochel. And if there's anybody here from my Machon from 40 years ago, I think there were some people, right? Betsy and Seth and Warren and Mike, and you remember that, we actually were the people who were the first people to get to teach that song in camp, which is kind of amazing. I found out only recently, actually, that in 1985, Young Judea at their national convention voted to make Aniva Atah its official song. So to have been among the kids who actually taught the song for the first time at camp, and now 40 years later to give the Aniva Atah Award to Mel Reesfield, sometimes you just get lucky. Let me read this award. This beautiful award, which I think is up on the screen, says, in recognition of a lifetime of dedication to inspiring a love of Zion, a passion for the Jewish people, land, and book, and a devotion to the imperative of Tikkun Olam, we proudly present our teacher, leader, and friend, Mel Reesfield, with the Young Judea Aniva Atah Award on behalf of generations of Judeans, past, present, and future. Toda Rabah. And in addition to the award, we're presenting Mel with this beautiful piece of original artwork that I believe is also on the screen, created by Eitana Perlmutter, a National Maskirut member in 1976, and a fellow Queens Young Judean. Mel wishes he could be here tonight. I saw him in the spring, and he just says, there's nothing more in the world he would have loved to have done than to have been here tonight, but he's here in spirit, and he'll certainly see the proceedings of tonight because they're being recorded. He also will be presented with these awards in person at the 60th anniversary of Year Course celebration in November in Jerusalem, and no doubt he will give everyone the finger. Mel, we love you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Powell, and I am on this year's National Maskirut as Social Action Programmer. Why social action? Because it is simply who I am and what I do. But I was not always this way. In 2014, I was a participant on Young Judea's Alternative Winter Break in Los Angeles. During this trip, I was able to bring meaning to the statistics I've heard and learned about. I was able to put a face on the 1 in 4 American children that go hungry every night. I was able to put a face on the homeless. I interacted with these people on a day-to-day basis, sitting with them for dinner each and every night. These people are people, they are real people, and they are struggling, and I know that we have the power to fix it. After Alternative Winter Break, I realized what Young Judea does best: inspiring teens, inspiring children, passing down passion. The more teens that are able to look at this world, recognize its flaws, and recognize that they have the power to change them, the more power we as Young Judea have. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michaela Weinstein. Thank you. So I spent my last year on your course, of course, and I had the life-changing experience to spend 3 weeks in the Agahozo Shalom Youth Village with 12 other year courses. There are no words to describe the warmth I felt when I entered the dining hall at Agahozo Shalom on that very first night. While the 500 new faces were totally overwhelming, there was something quite familiar. It was unclear at first, but after a few hours, I realized why. Students at one table talking about their Tikkun Olam projects, while at another table, a group of older students were planning an evening activity for younger ones. It felt like camp. It felt like Young Judea. Because of the way Anne Heyman used her own YJ experiences to be a role model for the village, the students are some of the most inspired people I have ever met. A group of mensches, all of them, with incredible aspirations and goals. Role models are one of the educational tools in the village and something I always look to. I have been lucky enough to have many great Judeans as my role models. Obviously, my parents, my madrechim from Sprout Lake to TY, and of course, your course, and Anne. Each of them has taught me that as an American Jew, I have an obligation to do my part in repairing the world, whether that is changing one person's life or impacting an entire community. Thank you to everyone who has helped me realize that, and a very special thank you to Anne.
To the way you go to sleep at night. The way we talk to each other, the way we interact with each other, is to create an atmosphere, a world in which we think about repair, we think about making things good for everybody else around us.
We both went to Keturah for your course together. It was pretty much love from that point on.
I grew up in South Africa, and at age 15, my parents immigrated to the States. When I came to the States, we moved to Brookline, Massachusetts. I joined Young Judea, became very active. I went on Young Judea's year course to Israel, where I met my husband. We now have 3 children. I have always told my children that you can be anything you want in life, you can do anything you want in life. You can achieve anything you want in life if you want it badly enough and you're willing to work hard. In all honesty, I have the best of everything.
Young Judea's influence on Anne went throughout her entire life to her commitment to make the world a better place. Our song together was Aniba Nishanat Olam. And we really took that to heart. But Anne lived it, breathed it, and did something with it.
We were at a dinner that was related to another program that I'm involved in. And we had a speaker who was talking about the Rwandan genocide. I think my husband was making conversation and said, what's the biggest problem facing Rwanda today? And the response was, in a country where you have 1.2 million orphans with no systemic solution to the orphan problem, there is no future for the country. This thought popped into my head that, Israel had a Holocaust, had thousands of orphans, doesn't have an orphan problem today. There is a systemic solution. And literally the words just came out of my mouth, well, you should build youth villages.
Anne's persistence was legendary. Her passion was contagious. You look at genocide and just want to turn away, right? Like, what can you do for a country post-genocide? That question is too big for mere mortals. I mean, she said, no, our values actually show a path of what can be done, and we all followed her.
Tikkun olam, the act, the commandment, the mitzvah, is the act, and it has nothing to do with the recipient. That's really what the focus is.
Don't wait for opportunities to find you. You make your own opportunities in life. Each and every one of you is special, and each and every one of you has a lot to offer the world.
No matter who I am, I will do Tikkun Olam as Annie Heyman needed to us.
Seth and I were always engaged in philanthropy. We cared about, we always made a commitment in terms of our financial giving and in terms of our personal giving.
The people that go out there and change the world are really and truly shaped at Talyamuga. The world in which I find myself working on a daily basis is the world of social action. And whether I'm working in Uganda or Rwanda or with the Ethiopian community in Israel, everywhere I go, I am partnering with the Young Judean. It is an extraordinary thing.
We are here at the Anne Heyman Memorial Viewpoint, here up north in Israel, where we bring every single Young Judea group to be inspired by the story of Anne, by her activism, by what she was inspired by.
Anne firmly believed that most of the things that she was capable of doing, she got through her experience in Young Judea and from this year. I firmly believe is that in this group of people is the next person that's going to change the world.
Share what you have learned with those less fortunate than you. Always help those in need. Always stand up for what you believe and you know in your heart is right.
Is this working? Betsy and I were asked to speak about Seth and Anne. And we go way back with both of them. We got to know Seth in the movement. But Anne we never got to know in the movement. We met her on year course. But even on year course we didn't get to know her that well because she was on another section. It's only when we returned to the States and Anne and I both went to Penn that we got to know each other very well. You see, Anne lived at home in Villanova and she commuted to Penn. I shared an apartment with my year course mate, Mike Rosenberg. And Anne was like the sister who was always there. Anytime she needed to stay over, anytime she was working late on a project, she stayed over there. Periodically, Seth would come down too when he was afraid he'd be missing out on something. But sometimes, you know, he was studying too. And I remember very clearly one night that Anne stayed over. She was working on a paper, an end-of-year project for a political science class about the schism between Shia and Sunni in Islam. And her particular emphasis was on Syria. So there she was. She had the idea, she actually had the thesis that Assad and the Alawites would not be able to sustain the government, and eventually there would be sectarian bloodshed. So think about that. That was 1981. 35 years ago. Boy, she was always ahead of the curve. When we graduated, I came to work in the city, as did Seth. We both went to work on Wall Street, and that's when I was first exposed to that incredible Marin philanthropic backbone. All the kids were urged and expected to give back. For Seth, it was the Friends of the Weitzman Institute. So I remember the first time they had a gala, when Seth was already involved, he asked if I would support it. I said, sure. Then I got the invitation in the mail, and the cost of admission was about equal to my biweekly paycheck. But I knew Rich Stein was going, and I didn't want him to have to go on his own. So I said, okay, I'll go. It was only years later that I found out that as his employee, Seth paid for Rich, and I was paying out of pocket. Then later, Seth and Ann became involved with Dorot. And like everything they did it with incredible passion. Ann became chairperson, and she spearheaded the organization forward. And they actually honored her with their own gala. Sam, too, was also very involved in Dorot. And they had many other organizations that they got behind. And then, of course, there was the gestation of the village concept. Yes, clearly rooted in Judean values, but it was really much more than that. Ann's idea was to take a Jewish concept, in this case, it was the Yamin Ord village in Israel, to take care of the orphans from the Holocaust. And her idea was, if we can superimpose that intrinsically Jewish concept into the non-Jewish world. The idea was that Jewish values could be brought to bear to address any problem. And most importantly, to demonstrate to the world that Jewish values were more than a parochial concept based on Jewish issues alone, but rather to deal with the entire world. Seth also adhered to the values that he learned in the Tnuah for LiquidNet. He incorporated LiquidNet for good. And the idea here was that every employee was expected to not only give up their money, but to give up their time to a cause that they believed in. And because of that, LiquidNet is recognized not only as an innovative Wall Street firm, but also as one of the best firms to work for because of its values and respect for everyone, employees, the environment, and society.
In addition to all of the causes that the Marins have supported, it's important to recognize their contribution to Young Judea. So it was the Marins who built the pool at Tel Yehuda in Aleph, which I still can't figure out, Seth, because we know Ben is fast. Okay. And it was, just as importantly, it was Seth and Ann who first raised the issue of Young Judea's future and how it might need to change to succeed. That vision comes to bear today as Young Judea is an independent organization supported by its long-term partner Hadassah, which has been very generous with funding, as well as with offering its leadership. In addition, Young Judea is forever grateful for the major support of the entire Marin family. Through the generosity of Jeremy and Linda, Seth and Ann, Esther and Moshek, Sam and Holly, and their parents, Ed and Vivian, they, along with all of us in this room today, have decided that it's important to ensure that Young Judea lasts for another 100 years. Today, the Judean tradition continues with the Marin family. While Jeremy, Seth, Esther, and Sam all went on year course, so far, today, 7 of the Marin grandchildren have attended Sprout Lake, Tel Yehuda, or year course. Ron and I could not be more thrilled to present this award tonight to our dearest and closest friends for almost 40 years. I can picture Anne smiling now. Her ear-to-ear smile is just embedded in our thoughts. I'd like to call up Seth to join us on the stage. Seth, on behalf of all of Young Judea, we present to you an award that you and Anne presented to the last recipient, Yossi Abramowitz, when he was awarded the Im Tirtzu Award from Tel Yehuda. It's only fitting that you are the honoree today. This award is in recognition of extraordinary leadership, embodiment of Young Judea values, and dedication to the principles of Tikkun Olam. If you will it, it is no dream. Im Tirtzu, Ein Zo Agada.
It was not an accident that we picked this picture for you, Seth. Do you know that there are 3 candles there? And like the 3 candles in this picture, according to Pirkei Avot, Judaism rests on 3 pillars. Now, there are many interpretations for what the 3 pillars stand for. The famous commentator, Ronald Gold, believes that the 3 candles here stand for. What's so funny? You don't think I could have been one of them? It stands for 1, the miracle of Young Judea as it remains relevant for the next 100 years. The foundation and the drive that has enabled so many young Judeans to make such an impact on the world. And 3 is the future, and that is symbolized by Jason, Jenna, and Jonathan. Mazel tov to all Americans.
We'll just wait until the great educator, Ron Gold, leaves the stage. I'm going to try to get through this as best as I possibly can, but so I know I appreciate all of you coming out, but I want to talk to you. I want to tell you who I would like to honor tonight, and of course I want to honor Mel Reesfield for dedicating his entire life to inspiring so many of us with his passion and his education and his beliefs. And, you know, he is a true treasure to the Jewish people for all that he's done. You know, giving of one's life for the entire life, that's something, that's a hero. So I am here to honor Mel. I'm also here to honor Ann. Andrew spent such a long time trying to convince the Jewish philanthropic world that Tikkun Olam is really the one true core value that we all share, regardless of how we feel about Bibi in Israel, regardless of whether we're affiliated or not. Something that actually draws us all together as one people to make us so proud of who we are, and has really been the pioneer in Jewish philanthropy to focus us back on what Tikkun Olam really means for the Jewish people and what the possibilities are. So I'm here to honor Ann. I'm also here to honor Mike Berman and the whole board, and Betsy and Ron and the whole board who've done so much to bring this movement back from where it was. And without their hard work, this would not be happening today. And of course, Simon Klarfeld and Jeff Kahn and the entire organization right now, all the professionals at Young Judea that are actually making this happen. I'm here to honor all that you guys are doing for this movement. I'm also here to honor the rest of us, all of us who, after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of having been in the movement together, that we come back here and no time has passed. That we're all young Judeans and we all have something that's so much in common. That we all still get that thrill, the goosebumps when we're on the road, when we pass Port Jervis and when we're on Snake River Road and we see the first sign for Tel Yehuda and we're about to enter. And we remember where we wrote our names in the Beit Am, and we know where we wrote our names in the bunks and the tzrufim. And how did we explain what Young Judea meant to us when we were actually in the movement? How do you do that? Sorry, I can't come out tonight, I'm going to a Young Judea club. Well, what do you do there? We talk about Herzl and Zionism. What are you doing this summer? I'm going to camp. Really? Is it a sports camp? No. Do you have horses? Water sports? What do you do there? Oh, well, our camp. Well, we wake up and we have services. And then we go to breakfast, and then we have the first of 3 conversations, 3 get-togethers, sichot, we call them, for the day. And of course we have lunch and we have dinner, and then we go to sleep. What do you do on Saturdays? Well, Saturdays we have optional mandatory. It's awesome. How are the facilities? Well, some of the bunks have showers inside. What are you doing next year? Well, I'm going to go to Israel for a year. What are you going to do there? I'm going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to go live in the desert, go down to the fields and pick vegetables before it gets too hot where the sun will sear your face from your bones. Really? How much do they pay you for that? No. I'm paid. I'm paid. That's Young Judea. Young Judea is also about, at Anne's funeral, I have to say, the first madrich I ever had for my Young Judea Club showed up at Anne's funeral, came to the burial, came to Shiva, Michael Billig. Is he here? Michael and his wife Marcy. Unbelievable. One of the most meaningful things. I hadn't seen him since that first club. And Young Judea is also about me working with my best friend from camp for 30 years, Richard Stein. We did this together. Young Judea is how I run my business. Young Judea is how I parent my children. Young Judea is how I live my life. Was anybody here? I just have a story to embarrass my kids, but was anybody here at the Save the Darfur rally in Washington, 2006? Do you know how that came about? It was a sikha in camp that Jason was in that was talking about Darfur. And Jason comes home from camp and talks to Anne and says, why aren't we doing anything about Darfur? And Anne says, what would you like to do? I don't know, maybe we should hold a rally. That's how the rally came about. Young Judea is about all of the people that have inspired me throughout my life. A lot of people here that, you still have a hard time. Do you remember talking to your madrichim as an adult for the first time and how it's very, very difficult to relate to them? I had a get-together in Israel, and Eli Rockowitz came to this. And Eli Rockowitz, and I walked up to him and I said, you were my hero. He said, stop. You're an adult. We can relate. Anywhere around the world, and it was anywhere around the world that Anne did her work, whether it was Doctors Without Borders in Uganda, or dealing with the Holodomor and matriculation in Israel, or building the first solar field in Israel. It was always, for some reason, dealing with the Young Judean. It's not really a coincidence, I don't think. I don't think that Aniva Atah was just a song for Judeans. It's how we live our lives. And more than ever, Aniva Atah Nishaneh Ta'olam. It's so important. The world is really a scary place. It's a pretty screwed up place right now. Look who's running for president. Look what's happening on college campuses. Marvin, right? Yeah. But Aniva Atah Nishaneh Ta'olam. Why? Because the world is pretty screwed up, and we have to do something to make it better. Aniva Atah Nishaneh Ta'olam. Why? Because if not for us, then who? Right? Aniva Atah Nishaneh Ta'olam. Why? Because Anne and many other Judeans have shown that if you have a good idea and you have the will to do it, you can change the world. And why are we here? We're here tonight because the world is a better place because Young Judea has been in it. And the world needs Young Judea, and the world needs future Young Judeans. And that's why it's so important to me, because we got to keep this thing going. So I thank you all for everything that you do and for being here tonight. Thank you.
Rather tough act to follow. My name is David Stone, regular camp 1959, Chachon in Machane Avodah 1960, year course 6263. Year course 6263, and then any number of summers thereafter. In as much as I'm the last speaker, you'll be happy to know, I was going to say Acharon, Acharon, Chaviv, but looking around, that feels more like Acharon, Acharon, Zakein. Here I am. I realized as all the speakers were speaking about either Mel or about Anne, that there was nobody left to speak about. Then I realized actually the mission I was given was to speak about myself, which is going to sound very strange, but it's really the story of my experience as a young Judean in the past 3 months, not in the last 60 some odd years or 50 some odd years. I can't even count. Before doing so, though, I would just like to give a lovely example of young Judea friendships and how long they last. When I got married to my late wife more than 50 years ago, I had 4 ushers. Each of them was part of my chevra in young Judea. One is not with us today because he's in Israel with his family, but to many of you, I think he's probably legendary, Fred Lazen. The other 3 are sitting here as my guests tonight. Avi Mendelowitz, who is not only an usher by wedding, he was my college roommate. His graduate school roommate, Shireen Lawal Mendelowitz, was a bridesmaid at my wedding. Steve Lusgarten, the former garbage truck driver at Tel Yehuda, who's now a professor of economics and accounting at Baruch College, I swear to God. Sitting there with his wife was an usher, and of course, Acharon Chaviv, David Ruderman. I must tell you an interesting story about David Ruderman because it ties in to why I'm here to talk about myself. When I invited all of them to come tonight as my guests, or just to come, I immediately got back from Professor Ruderman, I think a 3-page email, dissertation, I don't know what, explaining why he didn't think he was going to come because he's not sure that young Judea is relevant anymore. Just keep that in mind as I continue. Shortly thereafter, I got a copy of an email that Avi sent to Ruderman and said, Ruderman, Stone is the chairman or something of this thing, just be there. And of course, here he is with his lovely wife, Phyllis. But the question, I guess, is precisely, and you know, I had a whole speech prepared, but I really don't think I want to give it because I think I'd rather speak from my heart. Because the question in my mind is why we are here and why young Judea is extremely relevant. I graduated, I retired from the practice of law, I think 12 and a half years ago. I spent a year in graduate school in art history, then I spent a year in Israel teaching law, and I've spent the last 10 or so years involved in Israel well over my head in every conceivable endeavor, organization, relationship, everything else. And I have been extremely saddened, I've been extremely embittered, I've been extremely disappointed, I've been extremely brokenhearted. Frankly, I hate what's going on in Israel right now. I hate what's going on in the American Jewish community right now. And I've been seeking ways to try to improve things, whether it's by being on the board of, I don't know, 6 different civil liberties, civil rights, social justice organizations in Israel, participating in financing the buses in which they came to vote in droves or anything. But I have found nothing. I have just not found an organization that worked for me, that seemed to be teaching what I think is the old original narrative. Frankly, I think that narrative has been hijacked. It's been hijacked on the left, it's been hijacked on the right, but the narrative that we all learned in TY, nobody seemed to be teaching it. Nobody seemed to be caring about it. Nobody seemed to be doing anything about it. And I kept looking, and I kept looking, and I don't know how I missed Young Judea, but, you know, the truth of the matter is, I was here a little bit late today because I couldn't find my glasses either. I'm not getting any younger, and sometimes you lose sight of things. Then 2 or 3 months ago, I got a phone call about Young Judea's having this gala, and would I get involved and everything else, and sat down and talked about it, and got something. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I said, this guy is telling the truth. Then Eureka, I found it, and it deserves everything I can put into it. So I looked, and I tried to get a sense of what the programs really were. Again, I don't know why. After 1967 was our last year in Tel Yehuda, my wife and I moved from Harryville to Cambridge, Massachusetts for graduate school, in her case, for law school in my case. And basically, for some reason or another, that was the end of our involvement in Young Judea, except for the fact that our daughter went to Sprout and TY in the year course and all that business. But we ourselves were not actively involved in it. And then once again, I get this call, I hear this story. It sounds too good to be true. I start looking around, doing investigations. A major foundation, a multi-billion-dollar foundation, with which I have a very keen relationship, it's in the process of dissolving and giving away $3.5 billion, but will not give away a penny without having done enormous research into the donee, the Avichai Foundation. I went to them because I had heard they had given money to Young Judea, and I said, what's the story here? And it turned out they had spent well over $100,000 doing research into Young Judea and Tel Yehuda and their impact on the world. And these people who are the antithesis, to my mind, of everything that Young Judea believes in, having done all this research, have decided to give a multi-million-dollar gift to Tel Yehuda and Young Judea, which to me had nothing to do with me. No applause. These are not people I like. I work with them, but I don't like them. But that doesn't matter, because what they provided to me was the picture that Young Judea really is all that I was told. So I decided to become a sponsor, whatever it is, of this dinner, and I couldn't be happier. I'm sitting here felling since I got here. But then it goes more than that, because I started digging deeper and looking further. And for example, a personal story. In late August of 1962, at a Young Judea National Convention, I was standing on the porch of the Chag Rochel talking to somebody, I forget who, I think it was Fred Lazen, and I see a girl, you were allowed to call teenagers girls, and a young woman, whatever, walking out of the Sifriyah, and I turned to him and I said, what the hell is Grace Kelly doing walking out of our Sifriyah? Turned out that was my wife. She became my wife. TY had a special meaning to us. So I went up there not too long ago with the people from Young Judea to see what was going on there. As it happens, I have a country house not far from TY, purely coincidental. And when I saw it, frankly, amazed me. I don't know how recently you folks have been there. Oddly enough, every building that was there in 1959 is still there. Not too many others, but whatever the case is. But more than that, I saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids running around, more Hebrew being spoken than was ever the case when we were there. A few more keep hope than was the case when we were ever there, which is fine, I guess. But a real sense of commitment. Far more Israelis than were ever there. And again, I came to this realization that after literally a decade of deep and serious searching for somebody who would continue to carry the torch that was first put in me in 1959, and has burned within me ever since, here it was, my old friendly favorite Young Judea. And I must say, without any overstatement, that I believe with all my heart, and frankly with all my checkbook, that we are the last best hope for what we all love and believe in terms of real Zionism, the true narrative, the third narrative, not. And I went to a speech recently where a guy, a big professor in Jerusalem, told everybody how the Six-Day War, every soldier who fought in the Six-Day War was Dati. I remember the Six-Day War. Not the case. That whole narrative, either Zionism is being Dati or Zionism is settlement, whatever the case. That's not what we learned. We learned from Arthur Hertzberg's book, The Zionist Idea. We learned about strange people like Beryl Katznelson and Ahad Ha'am and all kinds of different thinkers, and that's really, to me, what Zionism was, and it's disappearing, and it's vital, because without that, there will not be a state of Israel, and without the state of Israel, there will not be much of the Jewish people. Therefore, I at least have come to the conclusion that, at this point, the most important thing that I can be doing is getting more and more deeply involved in doing whatever I can with and for Young Judea, even in my 70s. And I would really like to ask each of you to consider the possibility of doing that as well. Not perhaps with as much fire, because my nature is to be a firebrand. Perhaps not with as much time, because not everybody has the luxury of having been retired. But there are things that can be done. Financially, I personally have made a very significant commitment to rebuilding a building that has a particular sentimental value to me at Tel Yehuda, and it will be done. But for those of you who are sitting at tables and have coasters, if you turn them around, it happens to be a pledge card. The amounts aren't great, but you're not limited to those amounts. You don't have to fill them out tonight. But you ought to think about filling them out or not filling them out. The maximum seems to be, if I can read, I'm sorry? Well, no, the maximum seems to be 2016, but there is a blank. Blanks can be filled in at, even higher amounts. Funding really matters, but there's even more that can be done than just funding. For example, I discovered when I got into Young Judea, because I grew up in a Reform household, but the shul down the block from us was conservative, and its youth program was Young Judea, and that's how I got to Young Judea. Now I'm told shuls in the United States basically don't have Young Judea, won't allow Young Judea. The conservative shuls are busy pushing USY, the Reform shuls are busy pushing NIFTY, whatever it's called, and the Orthodox shuls are busy pushing, I don't know what, even though I belong to one. But you could be doing things in your communities, whether it's causing a Jewish community center to sponsor or to permit a Young Judea club to meet there. To get your shul to have a Young Judea club as a balance to what is being done otherwise. Things just keep popping up, at least in my mind. I had the enormous privilege last week or 2 weeks ago of being at that Tethys when the Young Judea Year Course arrived in Gorin Park, and I had the pleasure of meeting the educational director of the year course. Educational director of the year course. Sounds, we didn't have such things. In any event, I asked him, I said, what's your biggest problem? And he said, we would like to have a more balanced program, but we can't access the more, I don't want to use the word left wing, but the more progressive organizations in Israel to come and provide speakers and everything else. And we think it's very important. It's part of Young Judea as a pluralistic thing. Everybody on the right, everybody with a kippah is running to talk to our people, but we can't find other people. I said, name 5 organizations. He named 5. I started to laugh. He said, what's so funny? I said, well, I sit on the board of each of them. I think I can solve your problem. Not all of you have the same good fortune as I have to be able to do something like that, but each of you, if you think hard enough, care enough, can reach within yourself, can reach within your world of resources and come up with things that you can be doing for Young Judea. Let me just say in conclusion, before the guy comes out with the hook, that there is a saying about who can be doing these things, and the answer, I think, is Aniva Ata.
Thank you, David.
guitar